The sun hit the Earth outpost like it was trying to melt the dirt into glass. Out here, in a place called Cricket's Rest, there wasn't much to melt. A few shacks, a postbox that hadn't been touched in a decade, and one boy sitting barefoot on a stump, carving a wooden bat with a butter knife and the patience of a saint. Duke Maddox was 10 years old and didn't know how to fidget. His movements were deliberate, slow, like he was born in a place where time didn't matter. He wore overalls a size too big, a white shirt that had long surrendered to red dust, and a straw hat whose fraying edges danced like whispers in the wind. He looked harmless, polite, curious. But people who made the mistake of stopping to chat with Duke often left with a nervous smile and the sense that maybe, just maybe, they hadn't been the one doing the observing. He finished shaving the edge of the bat, tested the balance, and leaned it gently against his lemonade stand. A paper sign read, 3 creds or a secret. Most chose the creds. Those who didn't rarely came back. A sudden hum rippled across the sky. Duke didn't flinch. He simply adjusted the glass jug beside him and reached for the cleanest mug. He'd been expecting them since Tuesday. The ship was sleek, Empire-made, though trying not to look it. Black hull angled wings, cloaked in adaptive mesh that shimmered like oil-slick water. It hovered above the scrubland for a heartbeat, then hissed downward, kicking up dust that rolled over Duke's stall like dry ocean surf. He stood and brushed off his knees. When the landing ramp extended, he smiled wide and raised his hand in greeting. "Y'all hungry?" he called out. "Lemonade's fresh. I even got mint." The first to step out was tall, 7 feet of iridescent scales, obsidian eyes, and ceremonial armor that pulsed with embedded energy. A Krathok warden bred for planetary sieges. Behind him slithered a glimmering silk being, rippling like light over water. Then came a spindly creature with 12 eyes stacked like marbles down its chest. Another was just a shimmer, barely seen, its presence marked only by a ripple in heat and a faint whine. The fifth didn't step at all. It dropped from the ship like a stone, thudding into the dust with a grunt. A brute from the Ogren strain, barely sentient, just enough intelligence to follow orders and crush ribcages. 5 assassins, 5 deaths in waiting, and 1 boy with a wooden bat. Duke poured 5 mugs. Hot day for murder, ain't it? The Krathok took a step forward. "You are Duke Maddox of Earth's colony Cricket's Rest?" Duke squinted at him. "Well, depends. Am I in trouble?" "You are to be collected. Quietly or not." "That's so." The Krathok nodded. Duke's smile grew just a notch too wide. "Then I reckon you ought to take a number." He gestured to the side, where 5 handmade coffins stood neatly beside the shack. They looked freshly built, pine-sealed with pitch, edges sanded clean. The largest one had "Oops" carved into the side. The assassins paused. None of their briefings had covered this. The silk being glided forward, voice chiming like glass. "These are symbolic?" "No, ma'am," Duke said gently. "They're optimistic." Without warning, the brute surged. Dust exploded under its feet as it lunged toward Duke, fists like anvils. Duke didn't run. Instead, he turned, ducked, and swung the wooden bat in a clean arc, striking the Ogren just under the chin. There was a sharp crack of something not wood, and the brute halted mid-stride. Its pupils rolled back. Then it dropped flat, the earth trembling as it hit. "Reinforced ochre," Duke said, inspecting the bat. "Told Pa I'd find a use for it." The Krathok drew his weapon, an electrified halberd of liquid alloy. Duke raised one eyebrow. "I ain't moving," he said quietly. "And I'd rather not spill anything over my lemonade. So if you'd kindly." The shimmer being flickered behind him in a blink. But Duke didn't blink. He twisted, poured lemonade into the air, and it sparked as it passed through invisible heat. The being screamed, high, short, and ugly. Its cloak of light peeled away to reveal a burning, twitching mess writhing in the dust. "I made the lemonade with thermoplasmic acid concentrate," Duke said with a shrug. "Tastes funny, but it cooks cloakers." The 12-eyed creature let out a chorus of clicks and tried to flee. That was mistake 3. Duke snapped his fingers. A patch of ground gave way beneath the alien, revealing a hand-dug pit lined with obsidian thorns and reflective lures. It fell without a sound. The lid slammed shut. The silk being launched its needles, hundreds of them, each spinning faster than a bullet. But the wind shifted. Duke tilted his head. The bat whistled once. He swung, not at the being, but at the thin metal pole beside his stand. It rang like a bell. A shriek tore through the air, resonant frequency collapse. The silk being convulsed mid-air, its body unraveling in gossamer shreds. Only the Krathok remained. His jaw tightened. "You are a child." "Yes, sir," Duke said, placing the bat carefully on the stump. 10 1/4. The Krathok charged, faster than a machine, a blur of rage and protocol. His halberd aimed for Duke's chest. Duke didn't move. At the last second, the halberd jerked sideways, yanked by something unseen. The Krathok stumbled. His foot landed on a worn welcome mat. It clicked. A net of electrified piano wire sprang up, slicing through his armor and yanking him backward like a ragdoll. He landed face down, twitching, still alive, but very still. Duke wiped his hands on a cloth. "Mama always said don't step on a man's mat unless you're here for pie or peace." He moved to each body, checking pulses. 4 unconscious. 1 likely dead. No mess. No stray blood. Just the sound of wind and creaking wood. He dragged the Ogren into the large coffin. The others he tucked in with gentleness, folding limbs, adjusting cloaks, whispering small apologies. When he was done, 5 coffins stood again. Only now they weren't empty. From his back pocket, Duke took out a little wooden tag. He scribbled on it with a stub of charcoal and hung it from the bat. "Try again. I dare you." He picked up a lemonade and sat back down. A shadow fell over the stand. A woman in a long brown coat, face lined like cracked clay, stepped forward. Her boots were dusty, her voice dry. "Why didn't you kill them?" Duke glanced up. "Ain't my style, ma'am. Just wanted to say hello." She nodded slowly. "You know they'll send more." "I'm counting on it." A silence stretched. Wind played through the wire trap. Something hummed softly in the soil. The woman turned to leave. "Hey, ma'am," Duke called. She paused. "If you're gonna warn them, tell the Empire this." He stood, his small frame casting a long shadow over the coffins, eyes calm, voice quiet as falling dusk. "Next time they come for me, they better pack a lunch and write a will." He took a long sip of lemonade, then smiled. Because somewhere high above, another ship was coming. The sun hadn't moved much since the last ship came down. Time stretched different in Cricket's Rest, a place where mail arrived once every 3 months, and the only law was written on the back of a flour sack in red crayon. Duke Maddox stood alone beneath the creaking shade of the general store awning, sipping a soda float made with starlight syrup and dust-chilled cream. His bat leaned against the bench like a loyal dog. Nearby, the 5 coffins still sat, now tagged with neat twine bows and little woodburn names. No one had dared move them. They were, in Duke's words, occupado. High above, in the starless belly of orbit, a different kind of meeting was taking place, frantic, flustered, imperial. The Galactic Empire had never lost 5 assassins on a single op. Not even during the revolt of the 9 Suns. Not against mercenaries. Not even against rogue AI enclaves. But here they were, circling a colony run by one boy and a lemonade stand, trying to make sense of the carnage without admitting fear. The Council of Tactical Anomalies convened in hologram, projected in firelight across glass domes. 12 alien races, slimy, scaled, winged, floating, all hissed or murmured their opinions. A statistical outlier, murmured the Glathid ambassador, her antennae twitching like piano strings. "One child cannot pose military threat." "A trap," rasped the steel-masked representative of the Diracs. "He's bait. No 10-year-old carves coffins." The vote was unanimous. Send more. This time, an elite tactical unit. 50 black-armored ghosts, enhanced with psionic jammers and a digital disruptor net. Not assassins, this time. A recovery squad. But they didn't know that Duke had already packed snacks for them. The dropship sliced through the atmosphere just past noon. It shimmered black and silver like a falling sword, silent, sleek, predatory. It hovered over the same patch of Earth where its predecessors landed, then deployed a curtain of air mines, drone scouts, and static sphere shields. 50 soldiers disembarked in synchronized silence. They didn't speak. They didn't scan. They simply advanced. Duke stood at the center of the road, waiting with a basket of biscuits. The wind tugged at his curls. A bead of sweat traced the line of his temple. Behind him, his bat leaned against the porch rail, still warm from the sun. The unit split, flankers swept the ridge, snipers settled in behind scrub, and an orbital relay initiated data pulse interference. Duke could see them twitching like moths in a flame they didn't know they'd lit. He held up the basket. Warm biscuits. Honey butter inside. Y'all seemed tense. The soldier nearest him stepped forward, plasma rifle aimed low. You are classified as hostile variable 97C. Surrender. Duke blinked. I made extras. The squad advanced. And then nothing worked. No uplinks. No target lock. No heat signatures. The moment they breached Duke's perimeter, exactly 50 feet from the lemonade stand, every bit of equipment shut off, like someone had pulled the stars out of the sky. The rifles drooped, useless. Drones fell like birds with snapped wings. Even the HUDs blinked to static and then words. Howdy. Panic flickered behind visors. Duke shrugged. Empire texture don't like jamming root. I planted it last spring. Grows fast. Pretty yellow flowers. Deadly to software. One soldier lunged, fists up. Duke sidestepped. He tapped the back of the man's helmet with a biscuit. The soldier collapsed, twitching. I added a drop of my lemon syrup, Duke explained to no one in particular. Messes with nervous systems. Real good with catfish too. The soldiers were seasoned. They regrouped, falling into concentric attack formations, switching to analog blades. But Duke had danced this waltz before. He vanished into the corn. What followed was not a battle. It was choreography. One by one, the soldiers fell not dead, but disarmed, humiliated, and tied in old horse reins behind the general store, each gagged with a handkerchief bearing the same embroidery, a smiley face, and the phrase, better luck next time. Back in orbit, their commander watched the feed go dark one screen at a time, until the last image was of Duke sipping from a metal straw, holding up a placard. You send 50. I send a message. And he did. Duke walked out to the only working signal relay in town, an old farm transmitter fused with parts from a soda machine and a weather satellite. He taped a handwritten note to the side, scanned it into the uplink, and let it beam toward the Empire's main comm grid. The message was short. It read, Dear Galactic Empire, howdy from Earth's quieter side. I'd like to formally request y'all stop sending your friends down here. They seem to have trouble adapting to our local cuisine and recreational games. P.S. Your last 50 soldiers are resting up behind the general store. I've fed them. They're comfy. P.P.S. Next time, maybe send a diplomat. We have rocking chairs and sass. Yours truly, Duke Maddox, age 10, but real mature for my age. Across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire on dry paper. It was too perfect. Too polite, too terrifying. The irony of it, it wasn't just a threat. It was a cultural insult. A declaration that the Empire, with all its fleets and protocols, had failed to understand the core weapon of humanity, the ability to smile while setting a trap. Alien news networks broadcast it nonstop. The footage of the prisoners alive and fed, sitting around a fire with Duke telling knock-knock jokes, horrified billions. Military analysts dissected the image of the bat. Children drew Duke's face in crayon. Memes exploded. The Empire went quiet. And then they started asking questions. Who trained the boy? Where were his handlers? Why hadn't Earth intervened? The truth was, Earth hadn't said a word. Not a whisper. Not a signal. Not even a sigh. Because they didn't need to. Duke was part of something older than the Empire knew how to name, the Lazarus Accord. A hidden project developed during the last war humanity almost lost. It trained children not as soldiers, but as strategists of silence, thinkers, observers, builders of soft chaos. Every Accord child was raised in a quiet colony, surrounded by folk wisdom and unspoken violence. And Duke? He was the best of them. Back on Cricket's Rest, the captives were released after 2 days. Each one was sent back with a jar of pickled okra, a note thanking them for their good manners, and a tiny wooden figurine in the shape of a bat. One soldier, Commander Arthur, sat in his bunk after returning to orbit, staring at the jar in his hands. The label read, "Pickled to perfection. Like your failure." He didn't speak for 12 hours. Later that week, Duke taught a lesson to the AI drones he'd built for school. He stood at the front of the class, chalk in one hand, bat in the other. "Today, we're going to learn about patience," he said. "That's the time between somebody making a mistake and you deciding how hard to make them regret it." The drones beeped in unison. He drew a diagram of an orbital relay, labeled every part, underlined weak points in red chalk. A soft rustling came from outside the schoolhouse. Duke paused, listened. A child's voice. "Mr. Duke, someone's flying real low." Duke opened the window. A single dropship hovered, unarmed, slow, painted white. He squinted. It bore no weapons, no shields, no escort. And when the ramp descended, only one figure stepped out. An alien, small, thin, pale blue skin, wide amber eyes. No armor, just a book in hand. He held up a letter. A message from the Empire. The alien said in shaky English. They want to talk." Duke considered this, then nodded slowly. "Well," he said, "y'all finally brought a guest worth feeding." He stepped forward, dust swirling at his heels. But behind him, in the shadows of the schoolhouse, dozens of eyes watched. AI drones, traps, plans. Silent protectors of a boy who never raised his voice, only the stakes. And out in the corn, something clicked softly. A satellite dish realigned. A signal was preparing. A reply had been sent. But Duke was already writing another one. In the obsidian quiet of Argoth Prime's deepest chamber, beneath layers of steel, secrecy, and psionic warding, the Galactic Empire lit its last candle. It wasn't literal fire. The room glowed with cold bioluminescence, humming low with fear. 12 chairs circled a single holopole, each seat filled by something older than war and more exhausted than peace. No more votes. No more task forces. The usual whispers of procedure died in the mouth. Because the message had arrived. A 10-year-old boy, smiling in black and white, saying, "Next time, send someone worth the trip." That's when they did the unthinkable. They summoned the 3 who weren't supposed to exist. Not soldiers, not generals, not servants of any flag. These were the Empire's locked drawers, myths only mentioned during the worst kind of nightmares, when the stars bled and even machines prayed. The first to arrive was carried in a glass coffin. The glider. They said he once hunted across time by listening to blood frequencies. He tracked a human to the edge of a collapsing star cluster and survived only because the human let him. A mantis-shaped creature with folded limbs of brass and silk, he emerged from his prism without speaking. Just stared with eyes that had watched suns die. Second came the seer. Not so much walked in, but rolled, a translucent orb of pulsing gray light, covered in thousands of tiny eyes that blinked out of sync. He didn't speak aloud. He whispered into memory. His presence made everyone forget what they'd said 5 minutes before. His only constant word, curious. The third was late. Then he walked in eating an apple. 6'2", scuffed leather coat, boots that didn't match, and a smile that looked borrowed. His face was vaguely human, except for the way light avoided it. He dropped the apple core onto the seer's surface, pulled up a chair that wasn't there, and said, "Y'all took your time. Thought I died waiting." The Empire called him the engineer. He had built weapons that wrote poetry while they killed. He had unbuilt a moon just to see if it would scream. His AI betrayed him in the end. Joined Earth, opened a pancake shop, started singing Elvis. He never forgave it, but he understood. Together, they were offered one task: extract or neutralize the boy. No excuses. No second chances. No survivors. And so, on a rainy night over Cricket's Rest, the sky broke open again. No fire this time. No noise. Just a sudden absence of stars as a shape the size of a cathedral lowered into the corn. Duke Maddox was in his barn oiling gears. Not weapons. Toys. He'd built a wind-up pig that squealed when you pressed its tail and a mechanical beetle that played checkers. He wore a denim jacket now, patched, frayed, and too short in the arms. His bat leaned against the door. It didn't need dusting. He felt them before they arrived. Like a breeze under the skin. Like the moment before a power outage. 3 shadows in the barn. No footsteps. No breathing. Just presence. The glider unfolded like origami in reverse. Limbs stretching out, metal whispering against straw. The seer hovered silently. His orbit stirred the air, drawing patterns no eye could follow. The engineer leaned against a beam, chewing on a toothpick and inspecting the toy pig. "Hello, gentlemen," Duke said without turning. "Fancy meeting y'all here." The glider clicked once. "You are the mistake." "No, sir," Duke replied. "I'm the reminder." The seer pulsed. Duke winced. A flicker of a memory, his mother's hand, bloody on the kitchen floor. Gone in a blink. "That's rude," Duke said, rubbing his temple. The engineer chuckled. "Y'all hear that? Kid thinks memories are private. Cute." The glider moved first, slicing the air with a limb so fast it whined. But it hit nothing. Duke was gone. Not vanished. Just elsewhere. He sat now on the rafters, cross-legged, sipping from a mason jar. "I got lemonade, if that helps y'all think clearer." The seer spun, trying to locate him. But Duke's presence echoed everywhere, trickling through shadows, tucked into gears, hiding in reflections. "Your mind is off-pattern," the seer hummed. "Unmapped. Wrong." "Wrong subjective," Duke said. "Yours is leaking through your eyes." The engineer stepped forward and offered the pig. "You built this?" "Yes, sir. It's adorable. It also transmits quantum signatures across dark-fold space. Only when you squeeze the tail twice. I like you. I don't like you back." The glider lunged again, this time using a neural net of knives. It spread across the barn like a spiderweb made of violin strings. Duke stood exactly where it should have caught him. But it didn't. He smiled and held up a spoon. The net retracted and disintegrated. "Barns lined with passive reactive magnetics," Duke explained. "Makes smart metal stupid." The seer hissed, frustrated now. Its glow pulsed into overdrive. It showed Duke the image of himself dying, shot, stabbed, drowned, burned, aged alone. Each death worse than the last. Duke looked, watched, then said, "You forgot one. The one where I win." The seer trembled. And then it saw it. In Duke's mind, behind the lemonade and the jokes, behind the carved toys and schoolhouse chalk, was a box. Small, wooden, nailed shut from the inside. Inside that box was something the seer couldn't name. It had teeth. The seer fled. It didn't glide. It didn't float. It just tore through the roof screaming, a sound no one would ever forget, because it wasn't a sound. It was knowing. The glider collapsed. His limbs folded inward. He bowed. He said, "I hunted legends. But legends don't build barns." And he vanished into dust. Only the engineer remained. He sat on a hay bale and pulled out a harmonica, played 2 off-key notes. "I get it now," he said. "You ain't dangerous because you're strong. You're dangerous because you're kind." Duke tilted his head. "That confuse you?" The engineer shrugged. "People forget. Kindness is how humans trap you. Y'all share meals, tell stories, build trust, then twist it like a knife." "I don't twist nothing," Duke said. "I just give folks the tools. What they build is on them." A long silence. Then the engineer stood and tossed Duke a small cube. "What's this?" "Fail safe. Use it if the Empire sends another fleet. It'll shut down their comms for a month." Duke weighed the cube in his palm. "Why were you helping me?" The engineer looked away. "Because I met a human once. She made me pancakes. Told me I was good." Duke's voice dropped. "You miss her." "Every time I kill something, I hear her humming that." Duke nodded and set the cube on the rafter. "Maybe you should stop killing then." The engineer gave a crooked smile. "You first, kid." And then he left. No flash. No ship. Just absence. Duke was alone again. He sat in the hay, fingers trailing over the cube. His bat leaned close. The barn creaked in rhythm with the wind, and far above, stars blinked as if trying to warn one another. In the morning, Duke would wake to a letter pinned to the barn door. The Empire requests a meeting. No weapons. No armies. Just a diplomat. But Duke didn't sleep. He watched the stars all night, wondering which ones had finally decided they were afraid. The Galactic Memorial Spire rose into the cloudless void like a blade pressed against the stars. Carved from obsidian mined from the dead moons of Tau Sycorax, it was meant to reflect honor, loss, and the solemn unity of all known species. But that morning, it reflected only fear. 12 banners whipped in silent mourning atop the structure, one for each founding species of the Empire. Below, on the ceremonial platform, 5 polished coffins hovered in perfect geometric stillness. They bore no symbols, only coded etchings that whispered of clearance levels and failure. The plaza around them was lined with delegates, thousands of them, ambassadors, tacticians, soldiers, analysts. None spoke, not because of reverence, but because of confusion and dread. 5 elite assassins, gone. Then 50 soldiers, gone. Then silence, and a boy's message. The same phrase repeated itself in too many languages. The child did this. The boy, the one from Earth. Every empire born in conquest eventually meets something it cannot understand. Most destroy it. The wise hesitate. The arrogant memorialize the dead and pretend control. So here they stood, pretending. At the center podium stood the Arch-Chancellor of the Galactic Empire, a war-forged creature named Zyril Tuun, wearing diplomatic bone plating and a voice coded in digital solemnity. His 6 eyes scanned the crowd as he intoned, "We gather to honor those who were sent to ensure peace and encountered annihilation. We gather to remember what it cost to delay action." The wind caught the silence like a sail. But before the next line could be spoken, the sky flickered. Not thunder, not warships, a broadcast. Without permission, without encryption. Every display, every hollow panel, every retinal feed blinked, then showed the same image. A boy, barefoot, straw hat tipped slightly forward. Behind him, a wooden fence and a glass of lemonade catching the light like a prism. Duke Maddox. His voice was calm, but the background hummed with mechanical awareness. Something was watching from behind him. Many somethings. "Howdy, strangers," he began. "Y'all look real pretty today in your black suits. I'm mighty sorry for interrupting, but I thought maybe you needed context. You see, you've been sending folks to kill me. 5 the first time, then 50, then 3 that shouldn't have names." He tipped his hat politely. "Now, I ain't upset, but I do get curious. What did y'all expect to happen?" The crowd stood frozen. He reached beside him and lifted a metal panel, lightly charred. An Empire-issue soldier tag fused into the surface. "This here came off one of the boys y'all sent last time. He begged me not to send it back. Said he'd be punished. So I didn't." He gently set it down. "Instead, I sent him home with pie and a note. I hope y'all read it, 'cause if you didn't, I can simplify the message." He raised a wooden sign, hand-carved, letters burned deep with patience and certainty. "Next time, send diplomats." And then the camera panned out. Behind Duke were the 50 soldiers, alive, sitting in rocking chairs, eating peach cobbler, chatting with AI drones, playing harmonica. One held up a sign of his own, "We're good. Thanks, though." The screen flickered. A new image. The 3 glider, seer, engineer stood behind Duke. Not bound. Not ashamed, just silent, changed. And then the camera turned one last time, to the coffins, the original 5. They hovered now above a wheat field, with hand-carved markers beside them. Each bore a name, and a sentence. Sent without asking, trained without choice, died without knowing why. Duke stood beside them. He looked into the camera and said, "I carved these, out of cedar. They smell like home." Then, without moving, he snapped his fingers. The coffins detonated, not into ash, but into fireworks. Each explosion shaped itself into a symbol, old Earth constellations. A bear, a wolf, a child's kite. Then, in blazing amber script across the vacuum of space, "We don't want war, but we don't walk away." Then the feed died. In the plaza, chaos bloomed. The Arch-Chancellor roared to restore control. Security scrambled. Delegates screamed. But the damage had already been done. 12 systems declared neutrality by sundown. 3 planets formally seceded. Dozens more suspended tributes and called home their soldiers. The word Earth had changed shape in their minds. It no longer meant dust and frontier. It meant control disguised as charm. Violence laced with civility. A smile that asked if you wanted pie, while planting a mine under your chair. In the aftermath, a closed meeting convened. The War Council of the Inner Ring. 6 surviving warlords. One question: do we respond? They all turned to the 7th chair. Empty. Reserved for humanity's representative. Unfilled since the Treaty of the Forgotten Skies. Until now. Because a diplomat had arrived. Not from Earth. From Cricket's Rest. A girl. 10 years old. Braided hair. Dress with stitch patches. She entered the room holding a pie. Set it gently in the center. And said, "My brother says hi." That night, stars trembled in systems not touched for centuries. Security alerts blinked red across the network. Not from ships. Not from bombs. From ideas. Words. Laughter. A virus of charm. A contagion of patience. Across countless sectors, alien children sat cross-legged with contraband recordings, watching a boy who carved coffins, poured lemonade, and asked the universe politely to behave. And beneath Cricket's Rest, deep in the soil, something hummed. A signal. A long-dormant machine blinking slowly awake. One word echoed in its root code, pulsing louder each second. Now. And in the house above, Duke sat on his porch, sipping slow, eyes fixed on the stars. He didn't speak. But he didn't have to. Because the Empire had already heard him. And this time, they were listening.